Back to the Nutrimedical report, and my oldest son Matthew Deagle is here, and he has some interesting comments to make. We had an excellent discussion with Harley Schlanger about what the real solutions are, things like reestablishing the Silk Trail, really putting, as I say, the original constitutional intent was to look forward to the public, which we don't see our politicians, both Democrat and Republican, except for Donald Trump, who actually is breaking up the cabal, and that's why even foreign diplomats and countries are all freaked out by Trump, because he doesn't want to have stop free trade. He wants to have smart trade so that there's a win-win situation for both sides. And there's also symbology here. In fact, Jordan Maxwell was one of the experts in symbology. I've had him on the program a number of times over the years. Jordan, unfortunately, now is sick, and we hope that he recovers. He's going through some pretty serious problems. I believe he's got cancer. But Matthew is, if you want to call it, the next up-and-coming person to deal with symbology, and some of these events are tied directly to numerology, biblical astrology, etc., and just looking at the mass psychology, which is, in a sense, very mathematical. Matthew, tell us about some of the symbology you see, since Super Tuesday 2 looked like Trump is still moving forward. We have little Marco Rubio dropping out. Kasich is trying to hang on. He kept his own state, but he has virtually no hope whatsoever of becoming the Republican candidate. And Cruz, the lying snake in the grass, we talked about this, his pedigree, we talked about this in the last hour with Harley Schlanger, is vile. All of these people, both Hillary on the one side and Cruz on the other side, are complete bought and paid for corrupt politicians. It's pretty nasty.
Yeah, they all... Yeah, I've got a little bit of a sore throat because I'm just getting over a cold here. But, actually, the politicians are just bought and paid for. Ted Cruz is an idiot as far as his ideology. His ideology is to combine the most hypocritical and superficial aspects of Christianity while simultaneously committing and endorsing the sin of usury and the sin of greed. That's right. The whole the Republican Party. It's good, and the best thing about Trump is that Trump is demolishing the traditional Republican Party, or traditional as far as the past 30 or 40 years. Because the Republican Party, since the Cold War, has been based on this false dichotomy of conservatism and capitalism versus socialism. Right. All right, but that's not the way it ever was, right? First of all, it's really between nationalism and Marxism, or tradition and Marxism. Right. It has nothing to do with socialism. So this notion that greediness and economic disparity is somehow an essential conservative value is a complete lie. Just read the Bible. It's all about relieving the poor. It's not about being endorsed by big corporations. Exactly. But Cruz just represents that. He represents this antichrist, or I guess you could say pseudo-Christ, right? That's what Jesus actually said. It's a better term than antichrist. It's a pseudo. Yeah, it's a replacement for it. It's a replacement. Pseudo-Christoi. He said pseudo-Christoi, which means pseudo-Christ or false Christs, right? Right. That's exactly what these guys are. Of course, Cruz is also a staunch supporter of everything Israel does. He's not a good candidate. And thankfully Rubio's out now. He wanted to perpetuate the Bush and Crystal and Cheney policy of the project for the new American century. His goal, that was his campaign slogan. So he's gone now, thankfully. Right. Hopefully Cruz will also continue losing to Trump. Unfortunately, Trump is now facing the threat of maybe even an attempted assassination. Which is why he needs much better security. The fact that what he had happen... when that happened, he was in a roundhouse stage, right? You don't want to be on a stage where you're surrounded on all sides by the audience. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to flee to. Right. He's too bold. But besides that, in this election, like I said, the only candidates worth voting for at all are Trump and Sanders. Sanders now is unfortunately losing to Clinton, but maybe he'll run as an independent. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Of course, there's some tenuous connections between Sanders and Marxism. I don't know how strong those are. I think he's a reformed Jew, so there is a possibility of... I don't think that he has a policy that can bring an economy together that can pay for the things he wants. His sensitivity to the needs of the people is there.
but he has no viable way of actually delivering it. You have to have an economy.
Well, I mean, I myself, I'm nonpartisan. I don't really care which party wins. I only care if the candidate has good ideas.
Right, but he also has to have a policy to actually deliver what he says he wants to deliver. So although Sanders...
my concern, the main thing we have to think about is, what's our biggest concern? Are we more concerned about the potential for a war with Russia in 20 years, which Trump wants to possibly alleviate by repairing our relations with Russia and by, not treating Putin like an outsider, as the Group of Seven now do and as the European Union constantly does, right? But rather joining hands with Putin and fighting terrorism together and not being so concerned with geopolitics and Marxism. I mean, because quite honestly, a lot of the basis for the criticism of Putin is just that he doesn't fit in. But Putin is not a big friend of cultural Marxism, right? I mean, that's why they try to paint him as homophobic or anti-feminist or whatever. It's all ridiculous. Right. But as for the Super Tuesday and recent events, obviously we see Trump gaining and we see Bernie Sanders losing. Trump has a lot of followers, but we'll have to see if the Republican Party supports him, because apparently they're still trying. They're still working.
I think actually the more that they actually polarize to tell them don't support Trump, it actually bumps them up. In fact, if you're a grade 3, if you're in grade 3 playing a yard game at recess, don't be like saying don't help this particular player, don't help him. The other kids would help the kid. So the more they actually protest against Trump, the more it actually pumps him up.
Yeah, you're saying reverse psychology.
It's reverse psychology.
I'm worried they're going to try to come out with some really big slander against Trump. They're working hard to find out something that they can use against him. Who knows if they'll find something? If they don't find something, they might resort to violence.
Well, I know. I think that they've already thrown what they can in terms of his character, because he's not perfect, okay? But what I see happening is that Trump is in grave danger of being assassinated. The JFK moment could have happened in Ohio. And he needs to have much better security, not just having body armor on and having a personal carry weapon and be a member of the NRA. He needs to have much more security than the security force around him. He needs to be on one side. He needs to have a bulletproof shield between him and the public. And he needs to not have this roundhouse type thing where they're all surrounding him. It's ridiculous. He also needs to have in the audience non-lethal weapons, tasers, beanbag guns, whatever, so that if someone gets unruly, you don't give them a sucker punch. You taser them. You hit them with a beanbag weapon and drop them to the ground and zip tie them. And, put a gag on them and get them out of there so they can't be cursing and swearing on the way out or punching or spitting at people. It's really simple. I mean, and you don't want people to be killed unless they're actually starting to shoot. If you have a shooter, you want to have spotters up high that can shoot them with a high-powered weapon and put them on the ground dead. Okay, but you don't want to shoot somebody unless they come up with a gun and try to do something. But you need to have a shield between them and Trump. They need to make sure, they need to treat it now from this point onward like it's a presidential address everywhere he goes. That's my feeling.
Yeah, well, I mean, we see so much opposition to Trump, and it doesn't make any sense, right? The opposition is all obviously biased.
It's all phony. It's all biased and phony.
There are
George Soros in there.
The reasons
Soros was kicked out of Russia, by the way. Go ahead.
I know, but the reasons for hating Trump are nonsensical. I mean,
right.
They're given reasons. The real reason is just because he represents nationalism, which gets in the way of their plans they've been going for since the 1950s with Bilderberg.
Right.
They've been trying to push internationalism and globalism, Marxism, for a long time now. All these top guys at Goldman Sachs, these things that were bailed out by Obama.
Right. Exactly. And so the symbology, Matt, we'll get into that more in this next segment of what's really going on. We'll be back in just a moment with Matthew Deagle. His website, MatthewDeagle.com. He says some amazing services there. Listen to his show from 12 to 1 Pacific, Monday to Friday on Rents. You just go to his web link, and he has web links directly to us live. And welcome back. So, Matt, let's talk about symbology of what's going on. Jordan Maxwell was one of the top experts on symbology, and I've recently talked to some experts about this. You're pretty knowledgeable about symbology and how it ties into group behavior, etc. And also you provide a number of amazing products over on your website that help people make personal decisions and financial decisions, etc. So let's talk about symbology and some of the things you provide.
Sure. So basically everybody's consciousness is affected by symbols through suggestion.
Right.
Everyone is, I wouldn't say governed by, but strongly influenced by symbols. You can see symbolic resonances in every major event, and they are one of the chief causes of the general trends of society, the chief causes of what day and in what location something happens. I discussed on my show today, for example, that it's no coincidence that we see these copycats doing the same thing as previous attackers did. Right. We see that, for instance, there were 2 Fort Hood shooters, not just one. There was the attack in Chattanooga, Tennessee, on a U.S. Naval Reserve which killed 4 Marines. There was also the recent attack on the 14th in Canada, in which 3 people were stabbed by an Islamist.
Right.
Possibly all of these events, or at least 3 out of 4, involved Islamists.
Right.
We know that in the case of the Chattanooga event, they tried to pretend the guy wasn't an Islamist at first, but eventually the FBI director confessed that the guy was, in fact, influenced by ISIS propaganda. Now, keep in mind that a person doesn't have to be in contact with ISIS to be affected, because this is a kind of collective influence. This is a cultural mind control type of situation. It doesn't require a direct link of communication back and forth. It only requires a one-way communication from the programmer or ISIS to the programmee or the killer. It is essentially taking advantage of the desire for murder-suicide and the copycat effect. It is a psychological mass consciousness effect. It's not. That's the danger with ISIS, is they don't even necessarily need to be in direct contact with their own soldiers. All that there has to be is this message: go out and commit attacks. Like last year when we had those attacks with cars, where ISIS inspired people were running people over with cars. Similarly, essentially, this is just a chain reaction. Once you have one successful attack on a base where they kill a recruiting center, in Canada it was also a recruiting center that was attacked, then other people are going to try to do the same thing. Other suicidal men are going to try to carry out the exact same type of attack in the name of Allah. Now this guy, in Canada, supposedly he said, according to reports, that he was told to do this by Allah. So again, we have these collective subconscious schizophrenia-related influences, and not just, not even necessarily the need for the communication directly to ISIS. All they need is the communication from ISIS, knowing that ISIS is there and that they want them to carry out the attacks, and will praise them on Twitter after they do so. And they get the fame, they get whatever. They want to die because they're suicidal.
Right.
That's basically it. The only motives they need are to be suicidal and to want fame, and then maybe religious fanaticism, and they do it. Yeah. So again, this governs everything. These sorts of symbols govern your life as well. Any individual out there listening, for good or for ill, and it's a good idea to learn about your own fundamental character and the influences that are
right. So you can provide that. You can provide their character. You can provide them weaknesses in terms of where acupuncture points. You can talk about their health weaknesses and strengths. You can talk about decisions for life decisions or financial decisions. You can also look at more advanced things in terms of looking at the symbology of what's going on in our culture. And it's
the basic services I provide are birth date and name analysis for $50, where I'll just tell you what your name basically means according to its sum, and your birth date, the symbolism of the day you were born.
Right.
Which is a combination of numbers as well as other events that have happened on that same day, traditional feast days and so forth. These things are all significant, even if you don't believe in religions or whatever, because they all have a collective meaning.
Right. The collective meaning is why you often find certain dates are often cross different cultures and religions. For example, the ancient date of Lupercalia, which is an Egyptian ceremony by the ancient high priest, is the same date as the Druids for the ceremony of the wolf.
quite often.
And Nimbus. And the ceremony for Christmas. I mean, people need to know that these dates are very
Christmas,
similar.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we only have 365 or 366 days, so a lot of things are going to happen on the same day, but the fact of the matter is
symbology behind them too.
But yeah, events of a similar nature quite often happen on the same date. For instance, the 14th of March, when the stabbing happened in Canada, that's called Pi Day, right? Pi, 3.14, etc., which represents halfway around a circle or 180 degrees, which then in turn has the meaning of 666. Right. Same thing with the date that's 22nd of July, or said 22/7, again 666, pi, or the opposition. Those dates, you see a lot of significant events happen, events significant to aggression and the meaning of 666. We see similar symbolism with, for instance, the date December 8th, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, on which the flag of the European Union was adopted by the presumably Marxist Catholic organization that's behind it.
Right.
It's the halo of the Mother Mary, adopted on a day sacred to the Mother Mary. You have to understand, for every good symbol, there's an antithetical symbol. It's an anti-logos. So, just because the Immaculate Conception to you means the conception of Jesus doesn't mean that's necessarily what the meaning is here.
Right.
In fact, it could mean the conception of the pseudo-Christ, right? The conception of the 666, which is more often what it is.
Well, you've done some symbology analysis of both Hillary Clinton and Ted Cruz, and it's kind of scary what you found. Tell us what you discovered.
Well, I discovered that Ted Cruz was born at around midnight on the winter solstice, which with jovial sign rising, meaning he's extremely paranoid and has a high level of pathological fear and reflexive aggression. On the other hand, Hillary Clinton appears to be a snake-like person who just wants to constantly consume and draw might to herself. She's a liar who will just say whatever it takes to wrap herself around you, just like a snake, and wants to...
Well, you can see her even taking Bernie Sanders' comments and literally trying to make them hers, when she doesn't believe in it for a second. When she supports things like hydrofracking, she's not going to upset Democratic governors that fracking in their state, even though they're destroying the water table and poisoning the population and killing off the environment. When she talks about trade, she's lockstep with international trade, isn't she? It's ridiculous. Thank you, Matthew. We'll have you back in hour 2 tomorrow. We will go on to talk to... And welcome back. And we will be talking in a moment to Bruce McKeeman. By the way, we're going to be adding... we have to go through a separate application thing, but they do have PET hyperbaric chambers. We'll talk about that later. They also have many new different types. They have a chamber that allows you to actually put a wheelchair in to the chamber, vertical dive. Especially allows you to wheel someone in who's not mobile. They also even have ones that you can actually bring in a gurney or into the chamber, then zip the entire chamber around, so you can end up with allowing someone who's very not. Hello, Bruce. I was just mentioning some of the new designs you have for the mild hyperbaric chambers. And I got to tell you, since I've got my chamber back with a new support system, it is fantastic. I missed it so much being away for a month. I can't believe it. I try to get in for at least an hour or so a day. I'm often doing my emails back to people when I'm doing consultations and doing research. And when your brain and your tissues are receiving the anti-inflammatory, stem cell activating, alkalinizing effect of mild hyperbaric oxygen, I use a little augmenter to add another 5%, and then add ozone as well. It's amazing. I mean, it really is. You heal faster, better, and greater. And in terms of anti-aging, no matter what you're trying to fight, whether it's just the aging process or tendinitis or anything at all, you can be from let's say peripheral circulatory issues to blood pressure to whatever. For example, we've now discovered, and I'm going to have the Vendus people on talking about the endothelix, which is a technology to measure blood flow in your capillaries with using a temperature probe, very simple, non-invasive. That say open-angle glaucoma is tied directly to nitric oxide and to the ability to generate oxygen. Well, nitric oxide to generate the microcirculation is tied directly to glaucoma, to microcirculatory problems, to peripheral neuropathy. And one of those important treatments I talk about is vitamin O for oxygen. You need to have it. And vitamin O, when you dissolve in tissues with Henry's Law, you overcome the ability of the peripheral microcirculation to carry it to the tissues, and you change the enzyme induction. You actually reverse a lot of things that even cause cancer and inflammation that is the underlying cause of most illness. It's pretty amazing. And, I tell people, no matter what health problem you have, if you're just even an athlete, or you're just trying to maintain and slow aging, or you want to recover from any illness. I mean, I cannot find an illness, that whether it's periodontal disease, migraines, coronary vascular disease, diabetes, heart failure, post-chemotherapy, there is not an illness that you'll heal faster and better if you take our nutraceuticals first and oxygen in the form of mild hyperbaric. And you don't need 3 atmospheres. You can do this at home. It's very convenient. I sit in my chamber that has a big director's chair and a triangular chair, so I literally could have 2 people in there. I often have my friends, which is a criminal defense attorney and his wife, a DA, in my chamber, and they love it. And it's large enough if you want to have your pet in there. You can have your pet, literally your dog or cat or whatever, in there with you if you wanted to. And you're not claustrophobic. Your chambers are bright. You can turn the walls into speakers. They're amazing. Really, there's nothing like them.
Yeah, I was just at a show in Vegas for the veterinary conference, and on my feet 4 days in a row, 12 hours a day. I came home with a 4-hour flight, just an absolute wreck. Right. Got in the chamber the following morning for 2 hours. Feet, legs, everything was restored. It felt like I had never left. So exactly, it really works, especially if the shoemaker wears the shoes. And that helps. Right,
yeah. For example, the UCLA just came out that 69% of adults are either pre-diabetic or diabetic in California, over 40. 69%, wow. Either pre-diabetic or diabetic based on their, the current standards, not ones that they invented. When we look at the population in terms of things like open-angle glaucoma, the most common cause of blindness, it's all microcirculation. When we look at the cause of heart disease with calcific plaque, you can pick up a high-speed CT scan, which according to Dr. Chauncey Crandall and other cardiologists is the most accurate way, better than the treadmill stress test, is a cardiac angio with a high-speed CT scan, a calcium score. Inflammation requires hypoxia. If you start taking the right nutraceuticals, which we have, and you take mild hyperbaric oxygen, you're not going to get progressive vascular disease. You're not going to end up with your glaucoma causing you to go blind. And what people should start understanding is these are simple things you can do at home. Your doctor, you're going to have to drag them into the 21st century. They're not going to go kindly into that good night because they're tied to big pharma. They're tied to doing what I call a paint by numbers, 1, 2, 3, out of the office, magic script pads done in 30 seconds, and they're out the door. That's the way it is. I mean, it's not good, but that's it. You have to face the music. Your doctor is going to go kicking and screaming into the 21st century. That's the way it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what do you think?
Well, again, it's when you get out in public and you start telling people the benefits, and they start realizing that whether it's a dog, a cat, your daughter, your son, your grandma, it's going to help them. It's going to get oxygen to those areas that have been starved. You take someone who's starving and you feed them, and guess what? They get strong. They get healthy.
Yeah. It is kind of amazing, isn't it? When you simply provide the right combination of things, you feed with, again, remember, it's all tied to oxygen. In fact, one of the things that people don't understand, when you get oxygen, you increase what's called NADH. And they did some research at MIT, and they found that 2 things that were particularly important are anti-aging max, which contains what's called the dimethyl resveratrol that affects the telomeres, and the other was NADH, and NADH is totally dependent on the oxygenation in tissues. If you want to look at NADH levels inside cells, it's directly related to the aging of the cells. As soon as you oxygenate it, the NADH level and the ATP level, which, by the way, we have D-ribose, which I'm renaming, D-ribose I call cell energy, and D-ribose as ATP energy. When you start taking these things and you take our NADH tablets, you get in hyperbaric oxygen. For example, one of the first things I do in the morning is I take 2 NADH tablets under my tongue. Boom. Brain wakes up, take my Cognition Plus, take my drink, with all my fancy things in my smoothie. It makes things totally different. People need to realize you don't need to take a drug. You can take the molecules that feed your nutrition, but the most important nutritional supplement is oxygen. Isn't that remarkable? In fact, I was watching a show on Amazon Prime about the discoverers of oxygen, about Joseph Priestley and Lavoisier. And what Priestley did is he heated up mercury and it released oxygen. He realized it changed the weight. So there was a vapor that came off, and he realized it made the candle burn more brightly. Well, the candle of your cells burns brightly when you have oxygen. You have to dissolve it in tissues that goes beyond the hemoglobin dissociation curve. When you do that, you reverse the changes, which are hypoxic changes, which occur in all autoimmune disease, all infective disease, and all cancer is a hypoxic situation. As soon as you reverse that, even if you're going on conventional chemo, which isn't optimal, you'll do better. You'll survive more. You'll increase the chances of not losing fingers and limbs if you're diabetic. You'll prevent yourself from getting dementia. You'll reverse the chances of going blind. All of these things are tied directly back to oxygen. We had people on hyperbaric oxygen at our clinic in Denver reversing retinitis pigmentosa, and they couldn't believe it. We were giving them injections of melatonin and simply putting them in the chamber. We weren't even doing all the fancy nutraceuticals we have now. On top of that, you don't need 3 atmospheres, just 1.3 atmospheres with oxygen augmentation and ozone, and you're set. And you can do it at home. You can do it in your bedroom. You can do it in your study. You can do it out in a patio if it's covered so it's not going to get rain on it. That's how neat this is. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. And I understand you've added ozone to your protocol.
Yeah, I have a little ozone generator that we sell them. We just have the line go in for 30 minutes. You turn it on, boom. It puts ozone in the line along with oxygen from my oxygen compressor so that I'm getting another 5-6% oxygen there. So it's instead of 21, it's 27%. And then we add ozone. You feel amazing afterward. You go, even when you're inside the chamber, it doesn't irritate your airways because when you dissolve oxygen or pressure, it cleanses your body. It kills pathogens. Nothing like mild chamber. You can get a total tax write-off. You can lease them. And the prices you have, lines of chambers are amazing. And again, we're going to also get certified so we can also recommend the PET chambers, but we don't have that yet. Right now we have so many amazing chambers you've designed that are the best in the marketplace. Ron Patterson. Ron, I love my little Lumen machine. I actually have 2 of them. I have one which is the dual pad 264, which has 2 132 pads right here at my desk. And I also have a smaller pad that I use for my eyes and my head that I literally put on first thing in the morning. I slap it on and lay there for half an hour just as before I'm going to get up and go moving around doing things. These are amazing, these devices. They turn off inflammation, they stimulate stem cells, they release nitric oxide for blood pressure, they literally reverse a lot of the inflammatory changes in tissues, they help detoxify. You set them literally just to frequencies. Frequency 7 for pain, frequency number 3 for ectoderm skin or for neuroectoderm brain and nervous system peripheral nerves, frequency number 4 for glandular organs like thyroid, frequency 5 for internal organs like heart, liver, kidneys, etc. If you're trying to re-stimulate kidney function, for example, you take our nutraceuticals for stem cell support and use a lumen photon over the areas of the body. We also have, by the way, peptides that I can obtain from the anti-aging society through specific channels if you contact me with a consult that now can modify your DNA, which is one step lateral to a stem cell transplant. In other words, your own stem cells will work if you use the DNA modulators. We have those now, so we can regenerate your organs with specific peptides for different organ systems. Amazing. Now, the lumen photon does this. It provides energy to alkalinize tissues, release nitric oxide, stimulate your stem cells, alkalinize tissues, detox, and heal. It's amazing. These little devices are so portable, you can use them in your car if you have low back pain. You can put them on your feet if you've got peripheral diabetic neuropathy. You can put it over your eyes if you're trying to regenerate your eyes from lower intraocular pressure, improve, stimulate healing in the back of the eye and microcirculation. Again, we're going to have the Avendus people talking about the endothelix technology that measures blood flow of capillaries, which now can directly quantifiably measure your microcirculation. And what people should start to understand is now we have these quantifiable technologies. We can prove that lumen photon works. Post-op recovery rooms, every recovery room in the operating theater should always have a lumen machine. If they put it directly over the wounds, people would be getting out of recovery and going home with all kinds of narcotics, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah, easily.
Yeah.
It manages pain incredibly well.
Yeah, now, people have to understand what pain is, and I'll just review this really quickly. Pain has pain generators. That may be in your ligaments, your tendons, the back of the disc, whatever. There's 5 innervated structures in your spine: the apophyseal joints on either side, the back of the disc, or the posterior disc annulus, the ligamentum flavum, the big yellow ligament in front of your spinal cord or nerve roots. And 75% of the nerves are the apophyseal joints. They're A delta and C fibers. And the other 25% are distributed between the back of the disc, the ligamentum flavum, and the dural nerve sleeve of the spinal nerve roots. That's it. Everything else is anesthetic. Now, when you're talking about pain, it's sent to the skin. The skin is what I call the pain modulators or projector. It's like a computer screen. If you turn on your computer and the screen is blank, nothing happens. In other words, you cannot see pain. The primary pain generator is a little organ at the dermoepidermal junction called the Langerhans complex. And I discovered this and actually did research to been published in 1986 in a patent, which I have for one of my technologies, which I'm going to start in the process of putting together to manufacture. And this technology allows you to actually go at that spot. We were using a formula that I had from Pencall Pharmacy, but you could deliver it by microcurrent as an iontophoresis disc. And the whole idea is that when you start delivering oxygen to tissues, you turn off pain because you've turned off these little Langerhans complexes by oxygenating them, by turning off the release of slow reactive substances of anaphylaxis, neurotendins, bradykinins, and neurotransmitters, and the primary pain gate is shut down. It also starts to heal the underlying tissues, so it turns off the swelling of ligaments and tendons, oxygenates them, turns off things like tumor necrosis factor alpha, because if you do a spinal nerve root aspiration and measure at the spinal nerve root where someone has pain, it may not even be anatomically encroached. It's just a chemical inflammation of the nerve root with these inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha. So what people don't understand is their doctor, often their surgeon, is doing something that's meddlesome, when really they have a chemical neuritis and they have a chemical causing a pain gate to open. It doesn't mean you need a cut. And, I was working toward my pain board certification. I was actually working at the operating room at the Institute Center in Colorado, the University of Colorado, under Hall and Brewer on Friday mornings. And that's when I came into my issues with the Colorado Board of Medical Examiners, because I was blowing the whistle on doctors who were doing inappropriate surgery by going to court or writing case reviews for the occupational medicine. Now, what you have to understand is the current approach toward many illnesses doesn't take into account that light therapy, far near-infrared light therapy with high-intensity LEDs, and by the way, these are the most high-intensity LEDs in the market. There's nothing stronger. They'll penetrate through 12 inches of tissue, bone, ligament, brain, whatever. So you can put them on your head if you've got migraines, or somebody's got, let's say, arteritis nodosum, and they've got polymyalgia rheumatica, which is a inflammatory disorder that can cause them to have a stroke or seizure disorders. Or if they have seizures. For example, most people don't realize that post-traumatic stress disorder is a seizure disorder of the limbic system and various nuclei that are in the amygdala. And with our nutraceuticals and mild hyperbaric oxygen and transcranial lumen photon therapy, you can turn off the seizure disorder. Isn't that interesting? So,
yeah.
Lumen photon is amazing stuff. Again, in combination with our nutraceuticals, mild hyperbaric oxygen, and other things that we provide, like micropulse with the Schumann resonance generator, we can actually turn off a lot of biological processes. You think, well, that would require a powerful anti-seizure drug. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It needs something simple like Pozanol, which we're going to change the name to Mood Elevator, Brain Mag and Calm Mind, things that change the redox potential. But as soon as you provide lumen photon, your peripheral nitric oxide starts to increase. So if you want to do it over your heart because you got heart failure, as soon as you provide it over the heart starts to actually pump better. As soon as you put it over the lungs, if somebody's got COPD, they start to clear the mucus. It helps the antipathogenics we provide, like Nutriodine, Allicin Med, the Silver 100, to penetrate and kill off the pathogens and to clear the inflammatory debris out of the lungs. It helps to improve the cilia, to move that mucociliary blanket to clear the garbage. So I call it the universal light Band-Aid. How's that? It's a light Band-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty neat. So what have you discovered with your pets and with your big horses? I mean, I like the idea of veterinary application, because when you do it in veterinary application, the animal's not going to lie to you and say, well, because they like you or they want to make you. They do stuff because it makes them feel better.
Amen to that.
So what kind of stories can you tell us about it?
Oh, Which ones would you want to talk about? Some of the stories?
Well, let's talk about your own pets, your dogs and cats and your budgies. And big horses. We can have what you started actually, I think, on large animals like on horses with the lumen pads.
Yeah.
That was, in fact, I think before you started even with humans, wasn't it? On horses.
Yes, it was. We started out using it on horses. That's how we first started using it. It didn't take us long to realize, well, if it works on a horse, it's probably going to work on me, and that's how we started going.
Right. So now the horses, what you did is you're able to stop inflammatory changes. Many of them, if they get a really degenerative change in their bones, they need to be put down. They end up dying because you can have a lame horse. A lot of the horses actually sleep standing up. If you have a leg that goes, these horses are done. So you've literally rescued horses that otherwise would end up getting terminated.
Yeah. Now, if anybody has had surgery or anything like that, this lights actually can be used right after surgery, and it dramatically accelerates the healing process because it's having it quickly after the surgery. It responds rapidly. Very often we've had first time we had a person that had a hip replacement in our with us, and they were given permission to drive home the next morning after the surgery. Literally, right. The next morning, this person drove home, got up, and drove home.
Wow.
And, that's how incredible it is. Dr. Bill, thank you.
Yeah, that really is pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, that was one of those. An elderly couple in our community. So.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And so Lumen photon machines are affordable. You don't need to buy additional pads. They'll last for years. Just treat them with respect and the wiring and so on. They have great support and technological, support if you need any help at all. With your device, if you want to know how to use the settings, just contact me and I'll tell you how to do them. But you'll love it. In fact, if you loan it to somebody, don't expect to get it back.
Yeah, these LEDs should last for a lifetime at least.
A lifetime, yeah, exactly. Amazing.